This week, more Honda parts. Last week, I showed you guys the new H22 billet spark plug cover that we were working on. They're actually going to be released this Friday, the same day that this video is coming out, but I just wanted to show you guys the finished product. I'm really happy with how these came out. I hope you guys like them. But anyway, what we worked on this week is a new oil cap for the golden era Honda engines. Those are going to be your B series, D series, H series, and F series engines. Pretty much all of these engines had a very similar looking oil cap from the factory. It was just a 6-point plastic oil cap, but there was one oil cap that was special. Honda decided that it was important for their Type R engines to have something that was unique and something that was a little bit different. While the shape of the Type R oil cap was very similar to the B and D series engines, they decided they wanted it to stand out. And so what they did was they formed a chrome-plated cover over a plastic cap. What's cool about this cap is that it really stands out against the wrinkle red valve covers that Honda offered for their Type R engines. So I figured since it's been a couple of years since we actually even offered a Honda oil cap, what better way to go than by taking Honda's original design and improving upon it. But before I show you that new design, let me rewind the clock a little bit back to when JSP first started actually machining billet parts. One of the very first products that we did make was in fact an oil cap. And I have one of our version 1 Honda oil caps here. Back when I designed our version 1 oil cap, I was still very new to CAD design and actually very new to CNC machining. And so what I came up with was just a very simple shape, no complex geometry, no 3D surfacing, just something to keep the oil in the engine. We kept that version 1 around for a couple of years, and a couple of years ago, we came out with a new Toyota-specific oil cap. Now, the reason I'm bringing up the fact that we have a Toyota-specific oil cap is because, again, this Honda oil cap is going to be Honda-specific. So let me show you what we came up with for our Toyota design. The Toyota design was based off of a TRD logo. So we took a TRD logo and turned it into an oil cap, replacing the TRD lettering with our JSP lettering. Again, in a similar vein, we wanted to take something that was an already kind of known design and something that people would associate with a classic Honda, but put a little different spin on it and make it our own. So when I went to design our Type R style Honda oil cap, I first needed to decide what is it that I like about this oil cap and what is it that I don't like about this oil cap so that I can make my own version. Number one, first thing that I really like about Honda's design is the accessibility for grabbing onto it. Often, too many times, aftermarket oil caps will look unique, but they're actually difficult to tighten and loosen on your engine. Honda, of course, does a really good job with designing something that fits your fingers really well so that it's easy to take off and put on. The second thing that I like about the Honda oil cap is, of course, the fact that it's chrome and shiny. Since I'm a CNC machine shop, I'm very partial to shiny billet machine type parts. So of course, our machined oil cap is going to also be shiny like the OEM one. The last thing I like about the Honda design is the simplicity of the lettering in the center of the cap. Obviously, because this is a piece of sheet metal that's formed over the plastic cap, they weren't able to do a lot of intricacies with the lettering. So simply enough, it just says oil on top, has an oil can, and the lettering on the bottom, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but I believe it's French for oil. Most likely because the Hondas that we got here in America, a lot of them were made in Canada, and French is a very common language in Canada. So I'm guessing that's why it also has that lettering on it. So the things that I don't like about the original Honda oil cap. Number one, it's a little bit too big. And what do I mean by that? So the size of the cap itself is actually fine until you put it onto an engine. Now, my problem that I have with the cap is that when you look at it from the top, everything looks great. But when you screw it onto the valve cover, it actually hangs off the back edge of the valve cover and sticks out. It's a little bit of an eyesore for me. Let me show you what it looks like on the engine. So here's our mock-up H22 engine. As you can see, the sealing surface on the valve cover goes right up to the back edge of the valve cover. And so when you look at it from the front of the engine, yeah, sure, this looks okay. But when you come around the side of the engine, it's always bothered me that the cap sticks off the back of the valve cover a lot. And I've got a B series valve cover too. Let me throw it on there so you can see it. Here's the Type R cap screwed onto the back of a B series valve cover. Again, most people see it from the front, and from the front it doesn't look terrible. But for me, as soon as I saw this sticking off the back, it really bothered me. So what's the solution for that? The only thing I could really think of was taking the same design and just sort of scaling it down a little bit. And that would reduce how much it sticks off the back. Another thing was to make the cap a little bit lower profile. So it's not a huge deal how the cap sticks above the valve cover. But let me put it back on the H. But on the H series engine, it's actually more pronounced than the B series engine. So again, these are just sort of like nitpicky details, but when I'm designing a new product, these are the things that I'm thinking about. Is I really want to find a way to enhance the aesthetics of every part of what I'm making to make sure that people don't know why it looks good, but it looks good. That's the goal. So the first step was to take the original Honda oil cap and take some measurements of it and draw one up. The way I start when I'm drawing most round parts is first taking the measurements of the part and then creating a profile that I can use to revolve a solid. So what I got here is geometry that I took off of the OEM part, plus I changed it a little bit. And what you're looking at is a side profile of half of the oil cap. So let me see if I can sort of line this up for you. Something like that. Make sense? And then you take that geometry and you rotate it around an axis and it creates a solid that if you were to cut this part in half, that's the shape that it would make. So actually what I can do before I actually reveal the finished solid model, I'll just show you how that's done. So if we're going to create a solid, we're going to revolve this geometry. It's going to ask us an axis to use, which is going to be this center line. And then we're going to create a body from it. And that's going to give us this shape. Okay? And then from this shape, I create geometry that removes all the material that I don't want. So for example, if you were to take that round shape, I would need to remove these little pockets and then this area here. And that would give me the look of the outside shape of this oil cap. So let me show you that geometry. So here's what that geometry looks like. Now this is actually all negative space. So when I rotate this around, what you're going to see is the geometry is all the areas that I didn't want there to be material. So this is geometry used to pocket out the larger top section, and this is geometry used to pocket out the lower section. So I guess what I can do is actually show you how that works. So taking the geometry that we have here, I'm going to cut out the sides of the part. So with the geometry selected, I'm going to make sure that it's going in the correct direction, which I want to cut down into the body of the part. I want to cut extending to a point, which is going to be our next step of geometry here. And that gives us these top cuts. Now to cut the next section the rest of the way down, I'm just going to select the other geometry. Then again, make sure all the geometry is going the right direction. We want to cut downward. And we're just going to cut this body through the entire part, so extend through all. And now we have kind of a rough shape. So you can see we're kind of around the rough shape of the original cap design. The next thing to do is to add all of these rounded fillet edges that are everywhere. The reason that this part has so many rounded edges is obviously because since it has to be formed, this metal has to be bent. And it's very difficult to bend at a perfect sharp angle. So Honda decided to just have all of these edges roll over on each other nicely. So to do that, we're just going to select all of the edges of everywhere and put our 1/16 inch radius all the way around the part. So once we add those radiuses, let me show you what the final part looked like. This is actually the final design and the finished product model in its entirety. So I only really made one revision when I was designing this part. This is actually the first 3D printed one that I did. And let me show you for scale the size difference between this and the OEM part. So geometrically, it's very similar. Size-wise, it's about 20% smaller, 15 to 20% smaller. But what I found was, because it was smaller, it didn't fit my fingers as well for when I was tightening and loosening the cap. So what I decided to do was take these ends and just extend them out a little bit further so there was more to grab onto. And here's the second 3D printed one that just has the extended little finger cutouts. I think you can kind of see how they stick out a little bit further. But this felt much more comfortable for twisting. And so this was the design that I went with. I won't bore you with the programming of the part or the machining of the part. If you followed our stories, you probably saw some bit of the machining. But let me show you the finished part. So here it is, the new JSP Honda specific Type R style oil cap. Here it is next to the original Type R oil cap. You can see the design similarity. We put them next to each other. You can see a scale for size. Again, about 15 to 20% smaller. It's a bit thinner when you lay them next to each other. On the thread side, they are the same, of course. Thread pitch, diameter, all that good stuff. Ours includes a new O-ring with it, which is a round O-ring that's going to seal nicely. Honda uses a flat O-ring that is ribbed. These are a little bit harder to come by, so it's a lot easier for us to include a round O-ring. These seal just fine. Now let's see what this thing looks like on the engine. Okay, factory oil cap and the JSP oil cap. You can see the size difference is noticeable, but subtle. My favorite part about it though is the lower profile fits a lot better with the top of the valve cover. And of course I like that it matches our plug cover as well. Here's the two caps next to each other. You can see for size. And for you B series guys, here's how it looks on a B cover. Now, I got quite a few requests for B series spark plug covers after I showed the pictures of the H22 ones. So you guys will be pleased to know that I actually will be working on a B series plug cover shortly. So stay tuned for that. So before I go, I just want to thank you Honda guys a little bit because I've been very heavily involved in the Toyota A86 and classic Toyota market for a long time, but the Honda market really is something that has been extremely close to me since I was a teenager. My first 3 cars were EF Honda Civics. My next 5 or 6 cars were also Hondas. I grew up in the Honda street racing, drag racing era. And so the classic golden era Hondas are some of my favorite vehicles of all time. And so my goal with our company is to be able to continue to offer all of the classic Toyota parts that I enjoy so much with drifting and all the other classic Toyota stuff that I enjoy. But I really do want to start diving deep into the golden era classic Honda stuff because it really does mean a lot to me. As the new generation Hondas take over, I really feel like the golden era Hondas are sort of getting forgotten about by aftermarket companies. And because now I'm in a position to be able to create a lot of cool billet products, I would love to put all of my energy into creating something that, as Honda enthusiasts, we wish was available in the 90s, but the technology really wasn't there for manufacturers to create it for us. So now we can add all of these cool billet accessories to our classic Hondas. So with your guys' help, hopefully we can come up with some cool new ideas, make some cool new Honda products, and just continue to keep all of these cars alive, and so we can all take them out and enjoy them like they should be enjoyed. So anyway, I just wanted to say thank you to you guys, and the H22 spark plug covers and the Type R style oil caps will be available actually the day that this video comes out, so this Friday. I'm going to offer you guys for a limited time only, if you purchase them both together, I'm going to give a $20 discount. So the spark plug covers are going to be $149. The oil caps are going to be $49. If you buy them together, $179 for the pair. It's only going to be for limited on the first run that we're offering these, and then the prices will just go back to normal. With that said, I'll see you guys next week.